to A Well-Designed Business. My name is Luann Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to another episode of A Well-Designed Business. It's Power Talk Friday. On the show today, I'm very happy to introduce you to Esther Pinky Kiss, the founder of Born to Influence, a boutique publicity firm specializing in helping experts and personal brands get more publicity, leads, and sales. Her clients have been featured on TV, in newspapers, magazines, and on some of the top podcasts in the world, all resulting in millions of dollars in additional sales for her clients. Esther has worked on campaigns in a variety of industries, from SaaS products, mobile apps, digital information products, and New York Times and other national bestseller book launches. Pinky is also the creator of the popular course Publicity Empire, where she teaches entrepreneurs how to get interview opportunities in the media. Pinky is also the producer and the host of Born to Influence, the marketing show, where she interviews highly successful entrepreneurs and New York Times best-selling authors about their publicity and marketing strategies. Now, before I introduce you to Pinky, I want to take a quick moment to thank one of our show sponsors, Camp Chroma. With Camp Chroma, you can streamline your virtual and on-site color design processes by learning how to harness the same science and color systems that global industries use. As a certified color strategist, you will stand out in your market because you will have a unique, evidence-based approach to color to offer your clients. Master the practical application of extraordinary color expertise with Camp Chroma, your online color education resource. To learn how you can do all of these things, head over to campchroma.com. All right, one other quick announcement before I introduce you to Pinky. If you're planning to go to Las Vegas market in just a couple of weeks, of course, by now you've probably heard about the live in-person business coaching event that I'm running. And if you are interested in getting your business in line, in focus, and on track, head over to luannigara.com/Las-Vegas to learn about this opportunity. And there are two other opportunities for us to meet each other in person. On Monday, July 30th at 10 a.m., I will be leading a panel discussion at Alder in Tweed with John Dupre of Revel Woods, Lindsay Humphrey of Design Collective, and Sarah Danielli, the CEO of My Doma Studio. And then at 1 o'clock, I will be doing a presentation at Cravat. This event is co-hosted by Cravat and My Doma Studio. It'll be followed by a book signing, lunch, and I don't know if they're having champagne or Prosecco or something delicious, of course, for all of us. So please, if you're going to be at Las Vegas Market, and you can come around to either or both of these events, please introduce yourself to me. And if you've already have purchased a copy of my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, bring it with you. I'd love to meet you and sign it for you. And if you haven't gotten it yet and you'd like to know more about it, you can go to luannigara.com/book. All righty, looking forward to meeting you in Las Vegas. Please be sure to introduce yourself to me. All right, now I want to introduce you to Pinky Kiss. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of A Well-Designed Business. It's Power Talk Friday, and I'm happy to introduce all of you today to Esther Pinky Kiss. Hi Pinky, how are you?
Hi, Luann. I'm good. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, listen, I'm so glad that you are on my show today. We have been connected by somebody who I value very much, Christy Hausler. Shout out to Christy Hausler, who from Team Podcast has been part of my team from the very beginning of my podcast launch. And in addition to, you are the founder of Born to Influence, which is a boutique publicity firm that specializes in helping experts and personal brands get more publicity, leads, and sales. In addition to all of that, you come very highly recommended by Christy as an outstanding businesswoman and an outstanding person. So that means a lot to me, and I'm so grateful that she did connect us and that you're here on the show with me.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So let's tell them a little bit more about you. So Pinky has worked on campaigns in a variety of industries, from software. Tell me that again. What is that software something what?
Software as a service.
Software as a service. That's a new little acronym for me. I don't know if it's new for you out there as well, but it's a new one for me. So software as a service, mobile apps, digital information, and Pinky has been involved in bringing several book launches to national bestseller status and to New York Times status. So we're going to talk about marketing here today and PR, and also to let you know that Pinky has a podcast that isn't airing new interviews at this point, but you know, the library is there and the information is there and the information is good. And that podcast is called Born to Influence, the Marketing Show. And so you can find that still on iTunes. And I did listen to several episodes myself in getting ready for this interview with you. But Pinky, the audience, my designer besties out there, they know that we've had a couple of shows recently on PR. We all know and love Amy Fleury, Recipe for Press, and we've had conversations where we talk about how to pitch the media and how to get our work in publications. And that has been what was interesting, I should share with you, Pinky, in that last episode with Amy Fleury, was that she actually had a moment where she said to think out of the box and don't just think of, as an interior designer, pitching yourself to just print media, but to different digital outlets and so forth like that. But what you do is, what you specialize in is in getting us ready for that, right? And having our ducks in a row and understanding what we need to do in order to even attempt to do this. Am I on the right track with that? Is that correct?
Yes, so that's a very, very important part of any publicity campaign, to make sure that you're really prepared, because very often when you're reaching out to someone who you have never connected with before and you think that your pitch is great and they should absolutely have you on the show or in the magazine, you can really blow it if you don't already have certain things, the foundations in place to make sure that they see you as an expert and as someone who truly knows what they're talking about, to make sure that you have credibility. So that's a huge part of what we do. And then, of course, we execute full publicity campaigns from A to Z as well for our clients.
Okay. And I am 100% that if I had taken the conversation in that direction with Amy, that she would agree with you that you can make the greatest pitch in the world, which is what Amy specifically teaches interior designers how to do through both of her books, Recipe for Press and Recipe for Press for Interior Designers. But that when, even if it's the most perfect pitch, when the editor or whoever it is that you're pitching goes to then verify and look you up, what you're talking about is having everything, locked down there as well. So talk to us about what are some of the things that we can do to be, and actually I'm going to stop right now. I want to clarify. Pinky and I discussed prior to going on air that we would have this conversation in respect to the business owner, the designer that is interested in publicity for this specific outcome of creating more leads and more business. Not necessarily talking about, because I know there are many of my friends out there listening that have a pretty nice platform and business established, and they would be looking to take their business. I'm thinking of Pulp Design Studio, Beth Dutolo and Carolina Gentry. My loyal listeners know these women, their business and their podcast episodes here. These are women that have worked for 11 years building their firm and then wanted to go into licensing and into product development. That's a different level of PR that is valid, but you and I have agreed that we're going to talk about the interior designer that is in his or her own market, has a terrific business, maybe is going to do $100,000 in gross sales this year, or going to do $400,000 in gross sales this year, and would like to access media and PR opportunities for the sole desire to create more business for their firm. That's a valid thing. Is that correct, Pinky?
Yes, absolutely. And you want to make sure that you're really, really clear on your goals. A lot of people just sort of equate it in their head that rich equal or famous equals rich. If I'll be in all the Oprah or whatever outlet you want to be on, then it automatically means that clients are coming. And there is a certain process that you need to have in place. Having those very big media outlets, those big name logos on your website is great for credibility. But if you're looking specifically to get more clients, then what you need to do is to make sure that you understand who your ideal client is, what kind of people do you specialize in working with, and understanding what kind of media do they consume, and be in front of them through those outlets, whether it's podcasts or YouTube shows or blogs or local newspapers or magazines, whatever it may be. And the second part to this is to combine your published interviews or where you've been quoted with your existing sales and marketing campaigns. For example, your email autoresponders, your Facebook ads, your organic social media postings, to make sure that you really bring it full circle and don't leave any opportunities on the table.
Okay, so for instance, what we're saying is if we are local designer in our neck of the woods and we have been featured in our local newspaper, to not just rely on the newspaper to spread the word and for a client out there in the world, in our community, to see that article, but to then create maybe an email that goes out to your list about it to let people know and things like that?
Yes, absolutely. You want to make sure that you look at your publicity as professionally produced content that automatically gives you credibility, because obviously someone looked at you as an expert and they trusted you with their audience, and then use that as a conversation starter with prospective clients and as building a relationship with your online community, for sure.
Okay. So right there, though, I created a situation where we jumped, ahead of the game, clearly. So let's go back to what are some of the things that we can do to be ready for media opportunities, and then we'll go into possibly how we create those media opportunities. So start us back at square one.
Okay, so square one would be to understand how to position yourself so that members of the media actually want to interview you. And there are 4 things that you need to have in place. The first one is to make sure that you have a compelling media bio. Now, this is a little bit different than what might be on your about page on your website, because that is just generally giving an introduction and it's really geared towards prospective clients wanting people to sign up with you. When you are creating a media bio, what you need to do is to write about yourself in a concise way where the person who you pitched yourself to, whether it's a TV producer or a magazine editor or whoever it may be, a podcaster, they immediately understand after they review the pitch, they like it, they click through, that, oh, this is a person who actually knows what they're talking about. They really have a track record. They have credibility. They worked on big projects, or maybe they've been featured in different media outlets. They shared a stage with certain big names, industry leaders, those kind of things, as well a little bit of personal information that makes you human, something that humanizes you. Like, for example, you might mention where you live and what part of the world or what city, whether you have kids or pets or what languages you speak, things like that, that will make it so that they can really easily relate to you.
To cut you off there, you're not prepared for this question. Do you have something at hand there that you could read to us, that's somebody's concise bio that is more media slant than their About Us bio for their work webpage, just so we get a handle on that?
just pull up something. Give me one
Yes,
second.
yeah. I just think it'd be interesting to hear the difference and what constitutes compelling information.
Right. And that's another thing too, that when you're creating your bio, you want to be clear about what type of media you're going after, or what kind of exposure,
Mm,
and tailor your bio to that. So what I mean by that is, for instance, if you're looking to speak on stages, be in front of live audiences, you will need a longer bio, right? It's 250, 300 words. For something like a TV interview, you would use something 120 to 150 words. Something like, for instance, a podcast might be as short as 30 to 50 words. A lot of podcasters are capping it at 50 or even less. So that's basically like 2 sentences, 2.5 sentences, right?
hmm
So what I recommend is that you start with the long one, put in all the details that you can possibly think of that might be useful, create it, edit it with the longest one that you would be using for the type of media that you're going after. And then from that, start editing it down to the shorter versions, depending on the type of media that you'll be pitching yourself to.
Okay. So, so let's use an example. Either read an example that you're able to find, or let's use an example of, designer Sally Smith, who lives in Livingston, New Jersey, and she's been in business for 20 years, and she's got a body of work of XYZ, and Sally is now interested in being featured as maybe in local TV stations as the person that they might call on to say, what are the hottest trends for fall 2018 or something? Am I on the right track on some side of,
Sure.
because we have to come up with why we want to be pitched, right? So, or what we're
Yes.
going to pitch.
So let me read you an example of one that I have in front of me that is from one of my clients, and then we can look at the formula of why those certain pieces of information are there, and then we can adapt it to an interior designer.
Terrific.
Okay, so this one is for my client, Mikal Dia, who you're going to be having on the show very shortly.
That's right. So we get a little sneak peek about Mikal. Okay.
So his TV length bio, it happens to be 142 words, and this is what we wrote. Mikal Dia is a digital marketing expert and founder of Funnelytics, a software company helping entrepreneurs and marketers convert traffic into more profit. Passionate about helping entrepreneurs scale their business in a faster and more efficient way, Mikal developed a simple visual tool for entrepreneurs and marketers to understand the numbers in their marketing at a glance in order to easily fix the holes and optimize what's working. Using this method, Mikal scaled one of his businesses from $2,500 a month to $5,000 per day in revenue, and has helped countless clients grow at a similar quick rate as well. Mikal has grown his marketing agency, White Coat Digital, to over $1 million in revenue in just 18 months. Originally from Montreal, Mikal lives with his wife and 18-month-old daughter in Toronto, Canada. To learn more, go to funnelytics.io.
Okay. So you've got components in there. So what are our things that we're hitting?
So the first one is a very short, straightforward sentence that says exactly what he does and what he specializes in. He is a digital marketing expert and founder of Funnelytics. So it says that, let's say for your example, it would be she is an interior designer and founder of such and such company, right?
Okay.
And then in Mikal's example, we put a little comma there, a software company helping entrepreneurs and marketers convert traffic into more profit. So in this case, it might be something like an interior design company helping, and then you would say what they're specializing in, what kind of clients they work with.
Right. It could be,
commercial,
boutique hotels, or
yeah.
You're right, or it could be busy families, or C-suite executives, blah blah blah. Right. Okay.
That's exactly right. Now, the second paragraph is something that would explain why you're credible. In this specific example, we gave some numbers of how he has grown businesses, right? What exactly the process does and how it's helped. It gave examples of some of his track record. What you might want to put in place here for an interior designer would be something like big name hotels that they work with, or something that the reader would be familiar with, something that would make that would impress them, right? Or a very good one also, if you're going for traditional media such as TV and radio, if you have traditional education, like for instance, you have a master's degree or you've written a couple of books, those are really, really good, or very famous clients, those would be really good to include here. And that's something that we have for Mikhail as well with one of the other versions of his bio too.
Okay. So right there, we're going into if you're specializing in C-suite executives, you'd say has designed homes and offices for, executives in Exxon and blah, blah, blah. Or,
yes.
It even could be like you specialize in children's design, right? You do, it doesn't have to be lofty. It could be, has designed, children's rooms from nursery to preteen or something like that. I mean, where do we go with something like that?
Yes. So anything that there is no specific of what is the right thing. Just think about from your own experience, what would be the most impressive for this particular reader. So you would always tweak it a little bit, whether it's a TV person or radio or whatever it may be, what would really help them to understand who you are.
Is this a place where if a designer has a particular specialty, say as a color strategist, we have a sponsor on the show, Camp Chroma, and Camp Chroma is an online on-demand course that designers can take, and at the end they are certified color strategists. So is this something in that place you would say, not only but they are also certified color strategists, from campchroma.com, and this is, why this is helpful? Is that something there?
So something like that I would pitch, or I would include in the bio for pitches for industry-specific publications that would understand the significance of the certification. For TV, I wouldn't necessarily do that because they wouldn't know what it is, and it just distracts you from the point. Okay.
So you have to think of your audience. Okay.
Yes.
What I was doing was I was thinking how, as a consumer, if I understand that someone is a certified color strategist, then I'm thinking, oh, they're going to come in and pick my paint easy, and I don't have to worry about this being this, arduous process. So, but okay. So there's different ways to tweak things, right?
Yeah, you would have not many, but like 3 to 5 different versions depending on where you'll be using them.
Okay, terrific. I stopped you. Go ahead on.
Okay, and then the second to last part is where you show something of your track record as far as what kind of people you've worked with or how many projects you've completed. Or in Mikhail's example, it was about revenue numbers because he's a marketing specialist. So that's important that we show that he actually helps businesses in a tangible way. So for an interior designer, it might be something like, she's helped thousands of businesses in the Northeast, in the tri-state area or something like that. That would be really specific, and that would be understood by someone who is reading it, that this person is not just woke up yesterday and decided to become an interior designer, but they've done stuff.
Okay, that's interesting because a lot of times I didn't come up from a formula. My husband just one day sat down and calculated how many clients we've probably had at WindowWorks since we opened, probably within 500. The number is accurate. And as of like a year and a half ago, he's like, we've serviced over 24,000 clients. And we started to say that to people. We started to say it, whatever. And so you're saying that that's a credibility builder. That's something.
Yeah.
I mean, for him, he just was like, wow, we are pretty crazy out here doing that.
and that is so important because that shows that so many people have trusted you. They've trusted you with their homes or with their businesses. They trusted you with their wallet, right? That you'll help and make the right choice for them. And that gives that type of a social proof that makes someone comfortable with wanting to learn more about what you can do for them.
Right. And so for an interior designer, even if you're in business 3 years, and you've had 30 clients, that's a number. You know what I mean?
You could even just say dozens of clients and update as you go.
Right. Well, and because don't you agree with this, at whatever level you're at, whatever you're attracting is usually you're trying to attract your level and just a level above. So if you're in business 3 years, you're probably not at a skill set, either business-wise or expertise-wise, that you're necessarily putting your stake in the claim to attract I don't know, an ultra high luxury project that's a multi-million-dollar project, right? That's probably above your pay grade. So it's not necessary to have 20,000 clients or $20 million worth of project under your belt. If you are in business 3 years and you've had dozens of clients, that's good because the person that's coming to you is probably at your peer level or just a tiny bit above. And so that impresses them, right?
Yes. Or if it's a local business, it's a brick and mortar, and there is something in town that you worked on, maybe, the city hall or something like that, or a hotel that is local or a store, that would be a good one to mention because they would immediately know what that looks like if they live in the same city.
Okay, so you could be in business 6 months, but if you just were fortunate enough to work on the cafe in town and just do a fresh up or a redesign, whatever it is, you could say, and recently finished the project at, Sally Smith Cafes in USA Town, right?
Yeah, I would probably put 2 or 3, just say that worked on projects such as, and then give a couple of examples.
Right. Okay. And then how about what if your body of work isn't so high in the numbers? So maybe, because a lot of times, look, an interior designer could legitimately work on 3-4 projects a year only, right? Because they could be several month-long projects, and depending on the size of your firm. So, say you're in business 2, 3, 4 years, and you've been doing 3 projects a year. So, okay, it's a dozen. But would you translate it, Esther, and say, what if you added up the value of those 12 projects? Maybe together those 12 projects were gross revenue or gross sales of $15 million between the renovations and all the specifications. Could you say has a body of work that represents $15 million or however you would word it?
Yeah, exactly. So what I would do is look at what are some of the most impressive little tidbits of information that you can share in a concise way. It's not about giving them a resume of exactly how many clients you work with. That's just an example of showing social proof. But if this would work better in terms of impressing someone who's never heard about you, say that we worked on or she has worked on projects that that grossed over $50 million total over the last how many years.
Right.
That is something that people would just their ears were put.
Right. You could say Sally Smith Design has managed a project portfolio of $14 million in the last 3 years in business or something like that over the last several years or something. And that's a cumulative quantity of the projects that you have managed and overseen. It might be 12 customers, 12 clients, but that doesn't matter.
That's right. Yes.
Okay. I like that. That's awesome.
Okay. So these are the paragraphs, the first couple 2, 3, that would help you with credibility, right? Understanding immediately, introducing you in the first paragraph of who you are, what you do, what is the company that you founded or that you own or work for, and what that company specializes in. And then we go into the credibility builders, such as the numbers, for example, or famous people or projects that you work with, anything that, books that you've written or something like that, that would really grab attention. Now we want to transition over to make it a little bit personal. So share something about you, why you are doing it. What is the why behind the why you are passionate about, what drew you to become an interior designer in the first place? What was it that got you interested in the topic, right? So for example, with Mikkel's, we actually moved it up a little bit. It was in the second paragraph in this version that I read out to you. It just says simply that passionate about helping entrepreneurs scale their businesses in a faster and more efficient way, comma, Mikkel developed a simple visual to blah, blah, blah. So you would want to say something that shows that you actually care about the projects and the clients that you work with, to show the heart behind it.
Okay. So you would say things like, she's passionate about doing this because, maybe you're a wellness designer and you just really want to create environments and spaces where it's green and sustainable and, wants to make the world a better place. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a really great example. So something like passionate about health and well-being. She's decided, or she developed this unique methodology for spas to become a truly caring place for where people walk or where women walk out more confident, happy, and taken care of, something like that.
And it also could be, I always like to look for the like totally obvious thing that, because a lot of times when I'm talking with interior designers, they're looking for the big thing. But a lot of times it could be just a little thing. So say you love working just with regular people, just like you're a regular person, you like to work with regular families. It could be is passionate about helping busy families create spaces that, the kids aren't intimidated to live in. I'm thinking of Christy Liu. I don't know if you guys remember the interview with Christy Liu. She's in the Maryland area, DC area, and she's got twins. And I can't remember. I think she has 4 kids altogether. But I remember her discussing how life is very different in a house with 4 small children. She might even have 5 kids, but it's very different. But, her as an interior designer still wanted her house to be beautiful. But, she doesn't want to raise neurotic children, right? And so that's a thing, that you're passionate about creating homes and environments for busy families with small children to thrive. But, the house still functions. Like she said, it's a whole thing when you want to set up the station to get everybody out to school every day at time and the station for everybody coming back from school, just that whole mudroom setup of everybody's got their cubby and everybody's got their lunchbox and everybody's got their backpack, right? I mean, that's a whole legitimate thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect example. So you want to show your credibility, and then that basically tells the person who is reading this why they should be interviewing you or quoting you. And then the why behind the why is your heart reason, why you actually got into this and what drives you. Mm-hmm. Now, the next thing is that you want to move over to sharing something that really shows the human side as well, such as, for example, where you live, or if you have a young family, or if you speak certain languages, if you have pets. Sometimes people even include the names of their pets or their kids. That's a really, really cool way to just make it so that they can relate to you.
That's so funny, because that's where you lose me, in the sense that I see it all the time. So I'm not contesting that it has value. I am a person that if experts believe it and say it to be true, then don't you be the one, dummy Luann, that says that's not worthwhile, okay? But I have to say, if we use Christy Liu as an example, I can totally see ending that with, and Christy lives in, Bethesda, Maryland, and Christy, forgive me because I can't forget exactly where you are. Bethesda, Maryland, with her husband, her twin girls, her, 3 other children, her 5 children, her, 16 dogs, and, blah, blah, blah. I get that because it supports that. It supports what we're saying above. But what if what you're saying above doesn't connect to that? So what if we were talking about somebody that specialized in commercial hotel design? So why do we want to say, when we talk about has managed projects of over $200 million from Asia to New York City, what kind of thing are we putting at the end that's personal? That does it need to connect? Do we say do we maybe do something like, Sally Smith and her husband live in New York City and they travel the globe on vacation searching for the next whatever? Or you just say Sally Smith lives in Iowa with her dog and her cat and, her whatever?
Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily have to be about your family. Remember, I mentioned languages as a good example. Okay. So, for instance, if it's for a hotel that maybe is part of an international chain, then mentioning travel could be a really good example, and especially if you speak several languages, not because you would necessarily use those language skills on the job, but they understand that you get how different people from different cultures, what they need. And so you will be presumably designing the space with that in mind. Okay. So then by that message, if you're an interior designer that's in a bigger metropolitan area, one of our big cities, Chicago, New York City, Miami, then mentioning languages is important because there are such a melting pot of communities there where different languages are spoken. Yeah, and especially if it's for bigger commercial projects, you never know who the decision makers are. So that could be really something that will help you actually create rapport right away
Right.
with people who are in a position to hire you.
Right. But and really what I was more thinking of is if I am going for residential, my pond, my market, if I am in a market that butts up to a major city where there's likely to have a lot of as English as a second language speakers, that's important. Like I'm here in New Jersey, 13 miles from Manhattan. If I had a second language, theoretically, in New York City, I've got Little Italy, Chinatown. Like in Newark, I've got the Portuguese section. I've got lots of communities where they are fully entrenched in their language as their first language. So that would be helpful to say, oh, and she speaks Portuguese, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got to put that on Kimberly's bio. So,
like even mine, for instance, on my website, it mentions my cats and where I live and the languages I speak and how many different countries I lived in. I don't know, like even with the one that I sent to you for the introduction on this podcast, I don't think I included that part.
No.
So remember that we have different versions for different purposes, but just at least on the long one, have it as detailed as possible, and then you can edit it down for the specific use to where you're pitching yourself.
Okay. Okay. All right. So that's very interesting. It's a nice little process there. And I think that, like I say, we often think, well, I'm just doing my thing here. I don't really have anything spectacular to put in a bio. But the reality is it's, we have Fred Burns on the show, and he always talks about what's your you, what's your only. We all have something. We all have something that sets us apart and will speak to somebody who's reading it that it resonates with. Agreed?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And don't forget that it's such a cool, easy example or easy way of building rapport, building credibility and building rapport. If you sent a pitch to someone and you don't have a relationship with them yet, which is a huge part of, by the way, the whole, reaching out and pitching yourself to the media to start developing relationships with members of the media. But if this is someone who's never heard about you before, they don't have that know, like, and trust factor. They like the story idea that you propose, and they click through to your website and they read your bio at the end of the pitch. It's not their job to try to convince themselves to make it fit somehow that you will be good, right? You want to present it and make it as easy of a yes for them as possible.
Okay. So let's fast forward a little bit. Let's make an assumption that we have gotten our bios locked down and that we have our 3 different length bios and we understand where to use each. I know we don't necessarily, but let's just pretend that we do. You mentioned a couple of times that, for TV, it may be 140 to 200 words. And for a speaker to pitch yourself to speak on stage, it might be 350. I think you said to 500 and possibly a podcast 30. So I love that, by the way. I love that tip. But the thing is, let's make an assumption that we've gotten our bio locked down. Let's also just make an assumption that our website is also locked down, that when what you say in your bio is confirmed when you get to the website, because I have to believe that that's important. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's make those assumptions that we're listening to you and we've done these things. What now? Tell to us a little bit, again, picturing the regular Joe in their regular environment, their regular lane that they're swimming in. Their goal is to get more PR and exposure for the ultimate goal of literally just having more local clients in their business. Okay. And there's nothing just about that. That's a big undertaking to do that. And we work every day to do it. But what happens now? What do we do when we're going to go to that local TV station or that local newspaper? What is that first layer, and how do we set ourselves apart, and what are we saying to them in order to do that, Pinky?
Okay, so the first thing is to really understand who your ideal client is. I'm sure you teach this a lot through your coaching, Luann, is that it's not just enough to say that they're local, right? You have to know what you specialize in. Now think about what is the conversation in their head, right? Like, let's say, for example, if you're specialize in nurseries, right? For people who are first-time parents, they will have very, very different questions than people who have already had 3-4 kids, right?
Right.
Safeties and everything else. So think about what are some of the worries, the desires, the frustrations, all of that conversation that is in your ideal client's head, and then what are the emotional triggers that underneath it that are causing these questions? What are the objections that you typically have to overcome on a sales call, for example? What are some of the things that you have to say over and over again to educate your potential clients? And with that in mind, you would create what we call your intentional media message content, your IMMC. And what that is specifically breaking down what would be the good stories and examples and case studies and anecdotes that I can share through my interviews in the media that will resonate with that ideal client and that also fits the media format. And what I mean by that is, for instance, if you are on TV, that might be a minute and a half, right? Very, very short interviews typically, or 2 minutes. And a podcast interview might be 20, 30 minutes, or even an hour. You have a lot more time to go into detail, to share more about your story and your methodology and your approach. You want to be really clear with what kind of media does my ideal client consume, and then what would be the right stories, the right messages, and the right specific talking points that would be relevant to that audience that will help me convert on these interviews, meaning turn potential clients into actual clients.
Okay. So what we're saying is, if we are, let's continue to use the children's design specialist, children's nurseries and children's rooms. If we are looking to pitch to be covered in local newspaper, we might do 5 tips, and we would address those pains, those concerns, those worries, those frustrations. So we're talking about, does the child's room need to be dark? Do we need to worry about cord safety with window treatments? Do we need to worry about allergies? Do we need to worry about off fumes for a nursery, right? But then if we're pitching media, I mean like TV, when you say 1.5 minutes, are you saying that you have your same touch points, your same objectives, because the worries and the frustrations are the same, but you need to get that message down in 1.5 minutes, or you pick the most important one to pitch? Like how just get that distinction for me clear.
Sure. So the how-to example for a newspaper article is a great example, because that they would have more of a listicle type of, or an interview or an article where you can give them how-to type of advice or lessons I learned through having my first child or something like that, right? And then for a TV interview, you got to make sure that your talking points are relevant to the news hook. So for TV, it's very, very important because they are news-based outlets, meaning it's not like a podcast where it's evergreen and there is no urgency with why we have to cover this story right now, right? With TV, what you want to do is think about what's going on right now that the media is already interested in. What's going on in the news? Like, for example, there is an upcoming holiday, right? Or like Father's Day is coming up, for instance, right now. Or what could you do? Like, for instance, there is a local event in town, like a huge conference or some kind of a fair or something like that, that you could relate your expertise to. There is maybe celebrity news, like, whatever movie star is getting divorced and, or they are having a new baby, and this is what they should be doing to properly prepare. So you would want to connect your expertise to what the media is already interested in. And then based on that, you would choose your specific talking points.
Okay. And I have a question for you. It is one thing to be aware of something topical that's happening, and to be absolutely the person who can add something of relevance to that topic. But if you've never called the media before, it can't just be a great pitch. I mean, isn't it a matter of developing relationships with them, and even in that, like I have heard on other podcasts, people say to follow all of your local TV reporters on Twitter and talk to them and converse with them and comment on their recent, whatever they had on the news that day. And I have to tell you, that just sounds like the most tedious, insane thing on the planet to me to do. Like, honestly, let me talk to 10 strangers strangers for the next 6 months. And maybe when they're doing, something on podcasting and women over 50, they'll remember I'm the girl out here, right? Or like if you're talking to them about nursery design and interior design, and they'll remember I'm the designer out here. Like, how would an interior designer create awareness so that, because if you talk about something topical, it's topical. Like it's not like I'm pitching it like when Amy talks to us, she says, if you're pitching for press, she's got a media calendar, and she tells you that, the kitchen and bath issue is going to be in July. So you want to reach out to that editor the previous February. But when you're describing, and I hear what you're saying, something topical happens, how do you get heard through the noise? Or do you need to develop the relationship so that they think of you when they need it?
Okay, so this is a great question, and relationships are absolutely important. You remember when we started chatting just before we hit record today, and suddenly you have this realization, we met Christy.
That's right, whole different story.
That's, it changes the dynamic between the two people who are about to enter a conversation when you have something that establishes trust, right?
Right.
Now, with traditional media such as TV and radio and newspapers and magazines, they're much, much more news-based. So I'm not saying that it's not important to develop relationships as much, but they're really looking about fitting a specific editorial calendar. So what you call topical pitches, like, for instance, tying it to the news of what Trump is doing right now, whatever it may be,
right,
that is what will grab their attention. And then the next piece is, okay, is it really relevant? What you want to answer in your mind that, okay, if the producer is reading it or a segment producer is reading it right now, their question is going to be why is this segment important? Is the headline that you're proposing, is the headline something that would draw eyeballs to that TV show, to that news show, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is, does this person have credibility? Is what they're proposing through the talking points that you would list out in bullet points, is it something that would be interesting and preferably visual, right? This is something we haven't even touched on yet. And TV doesn't really like talking head type of interviews. If you can do demonstrations or suggest B-rolls or bring in props, that will really, really help you with getting this booked. So definitely, if you can, you want to make sure that you proactively connect with members of the media who work in the traditional media. And where it really, really will help you to get booked is especially in the online world. So for instance, if you want to be in magazines that have online issues, connecting with the writers who have the liberty of choosing what kind of topics they write about, or the editors, podcasters, people who have YouTube shows, people who have blogs, anything that is digital, it's so easy to just really connect with them as a normal human being, not because you want to pitch them some story right now, but really you would want to think about it ahead of time and then start developing a relationship. You might do something like leave a review on their podcast or share their episodes from time to time, or just connect with them, reach out to them on social media, or get a mutual friend to introduce you. Facebook is a really, really great tool for that because you can see who your mutual friends are. That's such a huge credibility builder because they trust the person who they have already a relationship with, and then you get introduced through them. So those are all things that will help you with not seeing them as somebody that, hey, what can I get from you? You never want to go transactional, that, hey, I'll do this for you so that you can do that for me. That doesn't work, right? You want to build genuine relationships and then ask them that, hey, what kind of guests are you looking for? What kind of stories are you working on? And be transparent. Say that I'm asking because, I might have a couple of ideas that would be really good for your audience or helpful for your audience, but I'm just wondering what you have in mind, what you're working on to make sure that whatever I might propose would be a good fit.
Okay. I mean, I guess we can understand it. Ren Miller was on the podcast early in the first year, and he is the editor of Design New Jersey. And he said, as the editor of a, fairly big magazine that comes out, I think it's 6 or 7 times a year, he's got to put a lot of content out there, and he looks for a well-constructed pitch. He looks for designers who pitch him and can give all the supporting information, the hook for the story. He specifically said, if the design project that you have just completed has some sort of storyline through it that I can use as the hook, the relatability factor to put in the headline, as you mentioned, imagined and into the content of the story. I guess we just don't think of as TV as looking for that, right? We think of being tapped on the shoulder to be on TV as opposed to they're just like anybody else looking for content.
Yeah, I mean, with TV, it's very, very much based on the news. So the
Yes.
best bet there, if you can, and especially after you have your first or second interview, you meet those people in person, the producer who booked you, the reporter, everything else. That's easier to start developing a human relationship from there. I would not recommend, or I personally wouldn't spend my time with, retweeting people who are local news reporters, because the reporter, it's not that there's anything wrong with that. It's
Right.
just not your best use of your time.
No.
Because reporters are typically not the people who put the segment together, right?
Mm-hmm,
They might be very nice people and they will appreciate your support, but they're not the decision makers as far as what the next story will be that they're covering.
Okay. And then there is something to be said for having local coverage. Because obviously if our primary goal is to get more local clients, we want more local coverage. But I've also heard or read, or somebody's told me, that you're not likely to be called for a bigger TV market, even as you could be the number one children's interior designer on the planet. And if you haven't done a few segments on local market, basically CBS isn't really looking to train you on how to show up and take part of this thing that's going to go on for 1.5 minutes. They want you to know that you've had some experience actually in the process of being in the studio in XYZ. Do you agree?
Yes, so if you want to be on national TV, like let's say you want to be on Dr. Phil or Oprah or the Today Show, definitely it's you'll have much, much better chances if you have at least a little bit of TV experience on local markets. Now that local TV station might be a CBS affiliate or a Fox or ABC or NBC affiliate station. That's totally fine. And they all typically have, their little acronym for what they call the station. They're like, for instance, in Palm Springs, where I live, NBC, the actual station is called KMIR, right? And I've been on NBC in Palm Springs two or three times, I think now. And so when I promote that interview, when I use it in my emails and Facebook ads and just organic social media postings, I'm going to say NBC Palm Springs.
Right.
Now, the actual station, they had their own little code name for that. That's how they identify the different stations. So what you would want to do if you want to have local clients is, first of all, be sure that you get coverage in local media, such as the local TV and radio and news paper and magazines. And then as you want to build up your credibility as well. This is something that doesn't have to happen overnight, but if you set a goal for yourself to have maybe a handful of TV appearances, maybe 2, 3, 4 over the next year, let's say, right? Then you would start thinking about what can I pitch locally that would be newsworthy, to have a strong hook that will be really important in my local market right now. TV producers love local experts. So if you can even include that in your pitch, that you're local, that really, really helps. The other thing that you can do is to think about where you will be traveling for business. I would not recommend specifically traveling just for a TV interview because, if there is a house fire or a shooting or something, they will take the crew, no matter how solid locked in your interview was, they will need those resources to actually go cover something that is breaking news.
Right.
But if you're traveling for a conference or you'll be speaking somewhere or you have a business meeting somewhere, make sure that you make the most of that trip by also pitching you to the local media there. And that way you can quickly build up a handful of TV clips for yourself to put together a little reel, and then that will give you the credentials to be able to pitch yourself for CNN or Oprah or whatever it may be, where it's a really big national show and they're looking for experience with live TV.
Okay. And that's a great question in there that you brought up, that when you're getting the clips, is it understood that you will receive a final clip of your appearance, or is that not understood and that you have to get your mom to tape it at home on the VCR?
So it varies from station to station. Some producers, especially if it's not as busy at time, they will happily email it to you if you just ask them. Others will maybe put it on the website, and that way you can do a little screen recording on your computer and you will have it. If they don't put it out there, it's always worth asking. In some cases, they will specifically basically say ahead of time when they're booking you that you do not provide clips. And that's totally fine. There are resources that you can find online. There's one, let me just look it up. I think it's tvclips.com or something. I'll send it to you because I don't remember the name of it by heart, but basically you can just tell them they monitor all TV and they would have the recordings of everything.
So there's more than one ways to skin a cat.
Such and such day, I was on such and such station and paid them, I think it's $60. They will give you the clip.
They'll find it. Okay. So it's interesting. I still feel like we are missing that in between, and not for lack of your not sharing information. Believe me, Pinky, I just feel like when I think about, okay, I'm a designer, I'm specializing in kitchens and baths, and what am I like? So I can understand how I would pitch my shelter magazine. I can understand how I would pitch even local newspaper, because I can do an instructive article on the 5 best tips for designing a kitchen, or the 5 pitfalls of designing a kitchen, the 5 most expensive mistakes in designing a kitchen, right? But I guess I lose the connection to where that becomes TV newsworthy, how you manipulate that and you spin that to be something that you can translate to TV coverage. I don't know. And it might not be possible either. I don't know. What do you think about that?
It's definitely possible. What you cannot think about is not like, okay, here's my business and I want to promote it.
Right.
That's something that is very, very common for all types of entrepreneurs, not just interior designers, that we want to think about, okay, I want clients, I want exposure, I want the credibility. But you really have to flip the script and think about, how can I help this audience? What is it that they're already interested in, and how can I contribute to that? So the question that you want to ask yourself is, okay, I have this skill set that allows me to design beautiful kitchens or functional, whatever. What is the underlying skill set that allowed me to develop this service that I do, right? So for example, I give you my own example, right? I do publicity. I help entrepreneurs get in the media. If I were to pitch myself for TV with that, hey, look at this, I'm a great publicist, I can guarantee you I would never get any TV coverage, because most people don't even know what publicity is, right? It's interesting for entrepreneurs, but for the general consumer, the average person on the street who watches breakfast television, that's just not a topic of interest.
Right.
So for me, I would be thinking, okay, what is my underlying skill set? Well, it's communications, it's connecting with people, it's building rapport. And so those would be specific things that then I can look at, how can I connect it to news stories that the media is already interested in, which is always changing, right? They're covering the news of the week this week, and then something very, very different tomorrow, right? So for instance, when Facebook had this huge scandal with the Cambridge Analytica and privacy and data protection and everything else, and Mark Zuckerberg was doing the what do you call it in Congress? The hearings, right? Yeah. So that was covered a lot. Now, if you happen to be someone who specializes in Facebook advertising, you might want to hook to that, right? Mm-hmm. So you would always look at what are the big news items or the upcoming holidays or celebrity news, something that they would be interested in covering, and then connecting the skill set that you have. And it's not necessarily that I make great kitchens. It's like I have an eye for color, or I know how to organize things properly, or whatever it is that allowed you to develop this service. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And so I guess if we were to think about the springtime, if we were talking in January, our designer is sitting in January and they're contemplating this, they're thinking about the springtime coming. So maybe they're thinking about their local TV thing. Maybe they want to have a spot, instead of like, I'm a designer, I can design your home. It's, I understand the elements that create a gorgeous outdoor space. Let me teach them to your audience or something. I don't know. Am I on the right track? Okay.
Yes. Or like, for instance, in the spring, there is Mother's Day, right? Mm-hmm. So you could do something like how to make sure, or for holiday get-togethers, how to make sure that your kitchen is set up so that you're not stressed out when you're supposed to be the one who is celebrated, right? Oh. Because your kitchen is just so not functional. It's not the way it's built out, how it would actually be conducive to putting together the holiday meals and having a good time with family at the same time.
Okay. Okay. It takes a lot of out of the box thinking to spin it. And I hear what you're saying. I mean, and we, look, we know this here, that we have to solve a problem for somebody, that we have to take the I of us out of the equation and see how we are serving somebody else and what we can do for them. And that becomes where we center our information and our message and our mission and everything else. But, then when I go back and put my marketing hat on and, like you said, think like an entrepreneur, it's, it gets like, you know what I mean? I go down the wrong road. So interesting, very interesting. So
yeah, and think about it, when you get those credibility builders, that is forever. If you have a TV interview on NBC or Fox or ABC, whatever it may be, and now you can legitimately say that on your website as seen on, and you're putting there those media logos, that helps tremendously with people who are coming to your website, who you're advertising to, for example, or who heard about you through word of mouth. They see that you've been featured in all these different media outlets. They're much more likely to hire you versus someone who has the same kind of business or specialty, but they haven't had any media. In fact, I have a client who specifically told me that one of his clients hired him and spent over $60,000 with him, specifically because seeing all those media logos on his website, because she just thought that, wow, this guy really must know what he's talking about. And that's just one person who was actually conscious that was a factor in her decision making. Most people are not even consciously aware of it, but it really does make an impression.
Right. Or they may not even express it, but if one person expressed it, others have thought it, is what you're saying.
Yeah, or they just don't even know, but somehow they like you. They just
right. Well, and the inherent in that is that any one person could theoretically, with a stroke of luck and a well-crafted pitch, land an appearance, okay? But it's not likely you're going to have multiple appearances if you really aren't delivering the quality content and solving that problem and speaking to the frustrations of the audience. So it is credible. So one is, one and done. 5 is, this becomes a go-to person.
So what you want to think about is to make sure that you're delivering value no matter what, right? Because you don't want to have these one and done things. One thing to remember is that the media industry is such that people are changing jobs often. So somebody who was an assistant editor at this magazine next month might be at a different magazine being an actual editor, not an assistant editor, right? So if you burn your bridges because you were just kind of somehow lucky or whatever way you squeezed your way into coverage and but it wasn't effective, it wasn't good, that's not going to help you in the future. That's another thing too. Like we talked about building your intentional media message content and identifying your talking points, your specific stories and examples and case studies and anecdotes that you would be using on those interviews. That's important ahead of time because that will help you be prepared so that those interviews are actually good, that they will make the interviewer, the producer, the editor happy, as well as they will make you happy because they will help you get more clients and customers.
Right. You need to be clear on what it is that you do and how you do it and why you do it, all the things that you discussed in the beginning, so that, and you're saying have your stories attached to it. Like Christy came on and told the story about having, twins and 5 kids and how it became important to have a house that functioned. And so that might be one little story that she would, if she were pitching herself, that she was on a show, she would share. And you might have another story that you would share, whatever it is. You're saying don't do it off the cuff. And it sounds like it's off the cuff because you're conversational, but you have an idea that when you're talking this topic, you're going to that story. When you're talking this topic, you're going to that story, because they illustrate your business from the full rounded perspective, right?
Yes. And the good thing is that especially with TV, most of the time they either give you the questions ahead of time or you can provide suggested questions, or even in your pitch originally, you already give them the potential talking points, so they will be choosing topics relevant to that. Right. So you know what they're going to ask you. And with anything else, like this is not to say that you have to stress out and be word perfect because you don't want to sound rehearsed, right? You just know work with your audience. With anything like a podcast interview, you might even have a little cheat sheet in the beginning in front of you just to help you. Oh yeah, I need to make sure that I hit on this one because this is something I know that isn't a secret dream of my ideal client, or this is a frustration that they don't even know that they have, but I need to educate them on that. You know?
Right. Exactly. There's so much. It's so, I mean, honestly, I could probably ask you questions for another hour and a half. So, but the thing is, and I don't often do this. I will often say at the end, if a guest has a product or a course, I certainly am happy that when the guest shares it. But I have to say, in this particular topic, it occurs to me that if one of my friends listening to this is truly interested in this as a game plan for their next, 6, 10, 12 months, year projection of creating actual media appearances, print, digital, and TV and whatnot, that you really do need a game plan for this. That this podcast episode alone, even combined with Amy's, which was episode 323, leaves a lot of gaps because it is detailed. But you happen to have an online study course that takes us through this publicity empire. And just give us a little synopsis on this and what's included and what it is. So if somebody is interested, they can, find out for themselves.
Yeah, so the main component of Publicity Empire is the Publicity Crash Course Masterclass that takes you through everything that you possibly could need and have in place. We touched on some of the topics, for instance, creating your bio. How do you position yourself in a way that members of the media want to interview you? How to create that intentional media message content to make sure that you're really shine on those interviews, right? That those interviews convert for you. We look at the different goals that you might have, whether it's credibility building or really you want to up-level your network to connect with certain high-level clients or get famous people to work with you. That's something that I've been able to do through publicity as well. Or it might be something like getting leads and sales, getting clients. For some of our clients, we literally added millions of dollars in additional sales to their business through the podcast interviews and other type of media that they've done. So it walks you through how to choose that, how to identify what kind of media to go after, how to reach out, who to reach out to. It even has software tools included that you might need, things that will make it really, really easy to be organized hours every day on this. We want to make it so that it actually serves you and your business. It's basically from A to Z, even if you've never been interviewed before, to be someone who performs really well and gets media coverage consistently.
That's pretty exciting. That's pretty cool for anybody who really has a goal. And what we also do know is that I don't know if we said it at the beginning of this show before, but I have had this discussion with Andrew Joseph, who is the principal of Andrew Joseph PR here in New York City. He happens to specialize in the design field, interior designers and industry vendors and products and so forth. But he specifically explained to us that you have to be ready for a PR agent, for a PR rep. You have to do a certain amount of groundwork yourself so that a PR rep can have something to work with. And you and I talked off air. You happen to agree with that statement, correct?
Yes. So what you want to think about is when you have a business that, let's say you've been in business for a year or 2 or 3, and you've built it to a reasonable level of success where you have a track record. You might have $500,000 in gross sales or something like that in a year, or preferably more. That's a good time to hire a publicist, because now you're essentially allowing yourself and setting yourself up to a situation where you can focus on your work, on your zone of genius, what you're best at, and then buy into those relationships that those publicity firms or those publicists have already built out through years and years of pitching clients the right way and connecting with them and providing value to those media outlets. You get to shortcut the process. Now, this is something, of course, that is an investment. So that's why I mentioned, to have at least $500,000 a year in turnover before you think about hiring someone to do this for you, because you want to make sure that you see a return on your investment. If you're not quite there yet, or maybe even you're just getting started out, it's totally fine, because you still would get a lot of benefit from being mentioned in the media, from getting clients and all those things that we talked about, but you're best served by doing it yourself. And so this course, Publicity Empire, helps you with teaching exactly how to do that.
Right. Yeah, that's the distinction. This is the sort of concept and idea and course that helps you set that stage so that you could go to the next stage where you pay for it. You're basically, there's no point in paying for a PR rep until there's some meat and potatoes for them to work with. But this is how you could do it if you're interested in it. So I think it's really amazing. And I just want to say it's not for everybody. You certainly can build a very healthy business your entire life without doing any conscious PR and hiring a PR agent, but it's another way to look at it. It's another way. Marketing is, PR is another form of marketing. You pay one way or another, right? So, oh my goodness. All righty. Well, thank you so much, Pinky. I really do appreciate it. So how does everybody find you and find your course? And I also recall, what I did remember was that you had a free giveaway, which was the media positioning checklist. And that's a good place to sort of just have a little, conversation with yourself and see where you're at.
Yes. So you can find us through my website, borntoinfluence.com. The media positioning checklist that you mentioned is something that will help you with how to position yourself to be in a position where members of the media actually want to interview you. It's literally a one-page cheat sheet. It's a checklist that you can just print out and take off the boxes as you go. You can get that completely free of charge. It's my gift to you. borntoinfluence.com/checklist.
Oh, okay.
And for the course, I also have a free training that you can sort of preview what the course is about. So that might be a good way to start as well, to really understand and see if this is right for you. It's about an hour and a half long training that actually takes you through some examples and case studies and showing what might be relevant to you and how to do it. Okay. So you can get that, or you can register for our next training at borntoinfluence.com/free publicity training. Okay. So borntoinfluence.com/free publicity training. And there's the little dashes between free and publicity and training.
Oh, okay. Right. It's so complicated. Okay. Well, Pinky, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your putting up with my 9 gabillion questions here on this and being a good sport and really taking the time to go down my rabbit holes on it. But I always have to bring it back to how it relates to us and not the big picture. And I do appreciate your patience with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Luann.
Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at luannigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.